For centuries, the debate over faith and works has shaped Christian theology. It played a role in the Reformation, influenced church councils, and continues to impact how Christians understand salvation today. But how did this debate unfold in history? And how did early Christians, the medieval church, and the Reformers understand the relationship between faith and works? Let's explore. After Jesus' resurrection, the early Christians wrestled with questions of faith, grace, and obedience. The apostles taught that salvation comes through Jesus alone, but they also emphasized living out that faith. Paul's letters teach that justification is by faith apart from the works of the law, Romans 3:28. James' letter stresses that faith without works is dead, James 2:17. Early church leaders taught a balance of grace and obedience. We are not justified by ourselves, nor by our wisdom or understanding, but by faith. Yet, let us hasten to do every good work. Similarly, Ignatius of Antioch, c. 110 AD, urged Christians to show their faith through love and righteous living. So, while the early church upheld faith as the foundation, they also emphasized that faith must be lived out through action. As Christianity spread, church leaders further developed their understanding of faith and works. Many of them echoed both Paul and James, seeing salvation as a process involving grace, faith, and obedience. Augustine of Hippo, 354 to 430 AD, one of the most influential early theologians, Augustine emphasized that salvation is by grace alone, but that grace produces good works. He wrote, "Faith alone saves, but the faith that saves is not alone." John Chrysostom, c. 347 to 407 AD, taught that faith is necessary, but that good works are the fruit of genuine faith. Pelagian controversy, 5th century. A debate arose when a monk named Pelagius argued that humans could earn salvation through their own efforts. Augustine strongly opposed this, teaching that grace is a gift from God, not something we achieve through works. So, by the early 5th century, the Church clearly taught that salvation is by grace, but that a true Christian life is marked by good works. By the Middle Ages, the Church had developed structured teachings on faith, works, and grace. The doctrine of salvation became more formalized through councils and theological writings. The sacramental system, the Catholic Church emphasized the role of sacraments, such as baptism, confession, and the Eucharist, as means of receiving God's grace. Thomas Aquinas, 1225–1274 AD, one of the greatest medieval theologians, he taught that faith is primary, but works cooperate with grace to bring salvation. The Council of Orange, 529 AD, rejected the idea that humans can earn salvation, but affirmed that works are a necessary response to God's grace. Medieval practices. Over time, the Church emphasized indulgences, payments or acts to reduce punishment for sins, which led to growing concerns about whether salvation was being tied too closely to works. During this time, the Church continued to affirm the necessity of faith, but works were increasingly seen as a cooperative effort in salvation, leading to concerns that some practices might downplay grace. By the 16th century, tensions over faith and works exploded into one of the most significant divisions in Christian history, the Protestant Reformation. Martin Luther argued that the Church had overemphasized works. He championed sola fide, faith alone, and rejected the sale of indulgences, famously stating, "A Christian is justified by faith alone, apart from works." John Calvin emphasized that good works are the evidence of true faith, but not the cause of salvation. The Catholic response. The Council of Trent reaffirmed that grace is essential, but condemned the idea that faith alone is sufficient for salvation. The Council declared, "If anyone says that man is justified by faith alone, let him be anathema." This marked a defining split in Christian thought. Protestants held to justification by faith alone, while Catholics maintained that faith and works cooperate in salvation. Today, the faith versus works debate continues to influence Christian denominations. Evangelicals and Protestants emphasize faith alone but recognize that true faith produces works. Many point to Ephesians 2:8-9, which says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works." Catholics and Orthodox Christians emphasize a cooperative role between faith and works. They often cite James 2:24, which states, "A person is justified by works and not by faith alone." Interdenominational views. Many Christians today acknowledge both perspectives, agreeing that while salvation is by grace, a transformed life will naturally produce good works. So, while the debate continues, most Christians agree that faith and works are deeply connected. The question is not whether good works are important, but how they relate to salvation. Looking at history, we see that faith and works have always been part of Christian teaching. From the early church to today, believers have wrestled with how to balance grace, faith, and obedience. At the end of the day, Paul and James, Protestants and Catholics, all agree on one thing: faith without works is dead, and true faith transforms the way we live. What do you think? Has the church changed its views on faith and works over time, or has the message remained the same? Let's discuss in the comments.